Hello and welcome to Over Asking. I'm your host, Joel Adair. I recently heard the term personal carbon allowance, or PCA. The term is used to describe a concept that some are claiming could be used in the future to account for an individual's carbon footprint. The basic idea would allow government bodies to set targets for individuals that would essentially enforce environmentally conscious behavior by measuring an individual's carbon footprint and greenhouse gas emissions. Based on my research, it appears there are a small number of countries that are currently exploring the concept. The idea is likely nothing more than an absolute logistical nightmare, but perhaps it could still be done in the future if the right type of seamless technology was made available for accounting and verification. The idea sounds scary, but it could actually be a force for good. On one side, it might actually help reduce carbon emissions, greenhouse gases, and a whole slew of other environmental problems. On the other side, it's one more thing to deal with in daily life, and it has the potential to become massively intrusive. After all, measuring an individual's carbon footprint might require monitoring what they eat, how much they fly and drive, even how much garbage they produce. I think if you really want to understand the concept and the likelihood that this will ever happen, you need to consider the current existing framework for carbon credits, carbon offsets, and how it applies to the big industry players who are already being forced to comply. The concept of measuring carbon footprints is nothing new when it comes to big industries like electric utilities, steel, gas, cement, chemical companies. It's actually been around for decades and has been used by government bodies from around the world in an attempt to decrease carbon emissions from the entities who emit the most. The idea is gaining momentum, and there are more and more countries who are creating carbon markets that run in a similar fashion. The basic idea is known as cap and trade. Factories that emit the largest amounts of carbon are required by law to participate and comply. These companies are given allowances or caps on their carbon emissions. Cap and trade incentivizes companies not to exceed their carbon targets because they will need to buy additional carbon credits for every ton of carbon that is produced in excess of the government assigned limit. One of the best examples of this in North America would be Tesla. Tesla was being rewarded carbon credits by several US states for selling electric cars. They were then selling those credits to other manufacturers who needed them to offset their emissions. These sales made billions of dollars for Tesla and pushed the other auto manufacturers to accelerate their EV production. But there are other industries that will continue to have a hard time reaching their emissions targets. I think it's safe to say that prices on oil and gas will continue to rise for the decades to come. That's because under the current framework for the cap and trade system, every year the caps are decreasing, getting lower and lower, making it harder to be profitable and operate industrial business under the cap limits, thereby hopefully incentivizing new green technology that minimizes greenhouse gas emissions and other programs that will offset carbon emissions. That's why some investors are incredibly bullish on the carbon market, because government is 100% guaranteeing it's going to get a lot bigger. But there are other challenges with carbon credits that are coming to light as the carbon credit market expands and evolves. It's sparking some interesting debates regarding the nature of green business. It's the age-old question: what came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first, the carbon credit or the Tesla? Would Tesla still be creating EVs if carbon credits didn't exist? Or are they double dipping and getting rewarded for something that they would be doing regardless? Finding the balance on every single axis of this new space is proving to be difficult, because basically companies can continue polluting as long as they can afford to buy the credits that offset their emissions. Now, if I were to attempt to lay this framework into a personal carbon footprint or allowance, the rich would essentially be allowed to do whatever they want to the environment as long as they can afford to offset their activities with carbon credits. That may sound alarming, but let's face it, there's all kinds of privileges that already come in today's society by having money. That's not a new concept. I personally would be less concerned about wealthy people enjoying their life and more concerned about the personal carbon idea adding to the widening wealth gap and ultimately squeezing the middle class and the poor even harder. What do you think? Would personal carbon credits create enough opportunity to balance the market, save the environment, and raise up the poor? Or is it going to potentially be just another example of overreach by big government that ultimately drives everyone insane? I suspect the answers are coming, and they will likely be dictated by the success of the current industrial carbon market. So what can we take away Personally, I think the cap and trade concept is interesting. According to the World Bank, it's estimated that in 2022, these initiatives will offset approximately 23% of the world's greenhouse gases. I'm not super confident with the numbers circulating on the internet regarding carbon sequestering and offsets. While doing my own research in this space, I found it a little frustrating. Most of the information in this space revolves around the size of the carbon markets measured in dollar amounts rather than actual carbon reduction and carbon offsetting. I'm sure most people would agree that technology that reduces CO2 should be the priority. Offsetting and the money markets surrounding carbon credits should be the secondary. But I guess that's human nature. Money is a big motivator, with global CO2 emissions for 2022 estimated to weigh in at about 36 billion tons, and the reduction target set to 45% by 2030. The demand for reduction and offsetting technology will remain high and lucrative. The existing market is evolving rapidly and has enough challenges to overcome before there's any need to shift focus on a more granular target like personal carbon credits or allowances. Currently, how we deal with our personal carbon footprint is completely up to us. But there is another rapidly growing carbon credit market for voluntary offsetting. So if you want to take action and offset your personal carbon footprint, you can do so today. When you purchase voluntary credits, you're essentially sponsoring a verifiable environmental initiative that has the ability to offset your carbon footprint. I'll leave more information in the description regarding other organizations that are currently taking action and helping build credibility in the voluntary carbon market. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. I would love to hear your comments. Thank you for watching.